Everyone thought they knew the story. Lorraine Whittaker, born cognitively impaired just like many of her siblings. A quiet woman, rarely speaking, sitting on the porch of a collapsing West Virginia home. And beside her, Timmy. Nonverbal, gentle, always glued to her side, always protected by her presence. He calls her mom without words. He points to her when asked. He looks to her when confused. He sits close to her like a child clings to the only safe person in the world. And so the world believed, Lorraine gave birth to Timmy. And if that part is true, then the next question has been burning through every social platform since the Whittaker story exploded online. Backhand index pointing right, who is Timmy's father? The family claimed a name. They were specific. They gave a face, a story, a location. They named a man who allegedly assaulted Lorraine decades ago. They said he impregnated her. They described him as someone who lived not far down the holler. They said his name out loud on camera. Joe Bolin. When asked how Timmy came to be, Betty and Larry looked at each other. Not with confusion. Not with uncertainty. But with a kind of dark agreement. A giggle from Betty. A shrug from Larry. A tone that sounded disturbingly casual. As if they were discussing broken furniture or borrowed tools. Not the pregnancy of a disabled woman. Mark asked them. Was it a relationship? Was she taken advantage of? Larry responded in a tone so nonchalant it sent chills through viewers. He just raped her. No hesitation. No outrage. No pain. Nothing. Then came the bombshell detail that changed the entire tone of the scene. Larry admitted that no retaliation followed. No police. No anger. Nothing. And that's when the confusion turned into something much darker. Because if this man truly violated a cognitively impaired woman who couldn't legally consent, why was he allowed to live just a short walk away, untouched, unpunished, unhidden? Unless the story isn't as simple as they made it sound. Unless the family told a story to protect someone else. Unless they needed a name, a scapegoat. The first twist, the convenient ghost. Not long after viewers heard the name Joe, internet sleuths searched public records. They found multiple men with the same name. Some passed away. Some still living. Some old newspaper listings. Nothing clear enough to confirm the identity of the man they named. Some viewers believe that was intentional. A dead man can't dispute the claim. A dead man can't be investigated. A dead man can't reveal a secret the family buried decades ago. If the allegations were true, there would be a police report, a medical record, a birth certificate with a father listed, court documentation, rumors in town that matched the timeline. So far, none of that has surfaced publicly. Instead, there's something else. Awkward silence from the surviving family members outside the house. Relatives who refused to talk. Neighbors who looked away. People who claim they don't speak about them. Silence doesn't mean innocence. But silence also doesn't mean guilt. It means fear. It means shame. It means there's more to the story. The second twist, the timeline doesn't add up. Think about this part carefully. Heavy multiplication X Lorraine has been cognitively disabled since birth. Heavy multiplication X she has never been able to consent. Heavy multiplication X she has difficulty understanding social situations. Heavy multiplication X she cannot communicate in complete words. Heavy multiplication X she cannot advocate for herself. So how did a man take her over the hill, violate her, and then she simply walked back home after? An even stranger. If such a traumatic act occurred, the family wouldn't simply shrug, unless what happened wasn't as clear-cut as they're claiming. Unless fire it was someone they couldn't accuse publicly. Fire someone close enough to protect. Fire someone in the family. Not because of love, but because of shame. Because this family has been protected by isolation for generations. Because everyone knows everyone. Because secrets don't leave the holler. Because when bloodlines are already tangled, nobody wants to admit how tangled they really are. And if the truth were worse than a neighbor's assault, if the truth meant exposing something within their own home, would they choose to name an outsider instead? Yes. Absolutely yes. That's how family silence works. The third twist, could Timmy's father be a Whittaker? Let's acknowledge what viewers whisper but few dare say publicly. In a family already confirmed to have multiple generations of intermarriage between cousins and close relatives. What are the odds Timmy's father was an outsider? Think about it. No police report. No retaliation. No local outrage. No shame expressed. No attempt to remove Lorraine from danger. No medical involvement. None. Zero. The only reaction was a casual story told decades later, on camera, when money and attention were involved. So if the name Joe wasn't for justice, if it wasn't for truth, if it wasn't for closure, then what was it for? Backhand index pointing right to hide something even more devastating. Maybe Lorraine wasn't assaulted by a stranger at all. Maybe the truth was inside the house all along. Maybe someone in the family got her pregnant. And maybe the story of Joe is the impossible lie they told themselves to survive the shame. Because if the worst-case scenario is true, ballot box with check, a police investigation should have occurred decades ago. Ballot box with check, Timmy's birth could have been evidence of a crime. Ballot box with check, someone in the holler protected a secret the family still carries. And maybe, just maybe, Timmy has been told his father's name as a distraction. Because he points to only one parent when asked. He doesn't point at a man. He points at Lorraine. To him, that's all that matters. To him, she is both mother and father because she is the only one who has ever been there. What does Timmy believe? When asked who his mother is, Timmy points at Lorraine. When asked who his father is, he says nothing. When pressured, he repeated a name that the others said first. He mirrored what he'd been taught, not what he knew. Because he does not understand biology. He understands safety. And the only person he trusts is Lorraine. What happens next? Experts have already taken Timmy, Ray, and Lorraine into state care. They are being evaluated medically, psychologically, and legally. If there is a hidden father still alive, still nearby. If there are DNA questions not yet answered. There may be answers coming that the family never expected to face. And if it turns out the truth isn't Joe at the bottom of the hill, if it turns out the truth was inside the house, then the real story has only just begun. Speech balloon comment below. Do you think the family named Joe to hide a deeper secret? Or do you believe the story they told about him is true? Backhand index pointing down, let's talk about it. If the family's answer was supposed to silence curiosity, it did the opposite. Naming one man only raised more disturbing questions. The story is full of contradictions, unanswered details, and behavior that simply doesn't make sense for a crime as serious as sexual assault against a disabled woman. And when a family's reaction doesn't match the seriousness of their claims, the truth is almost always more complicated than the version being told. So now the question is not just who fathered Timmy, but why the family chose to tell the story the way they did. To unravel that, let's look at the behavior, not just the words. 1. Why was there no anger? When someone learns their disabled sister has been assaulted, the normal reaction would be rage, protection, fear, shame, calling the police, confronting the attacker. But what did Larry do? He shrugged. He smirked. He told the story like someone describing buying a loaf of bread. And Betty giggled. Nothing about their emotions matched the gravity of what they claimed happened. That's not how people react when retelling trauma. That's not how people react when they watch someone they love get hurt. That's how people react when they are repeating a lie they don't fully believe, or don't fully understand. Their tone tells more than their words. 2. The logic hole nobody can explain. If the man who impregnated Lorraine lived nearby, if he was known by name, and if the family believed he violated her. Backhand index pointing right, why did Lorraine continue living in the same home with no protection? They never claimed she was removed from him. They never claimed they changed routines. They never claimed any precautions were taken. That kind of behavior only makes sense in two possible scenarios. Scenario A. They lied about who did it. They invented an outsider to take the blame. Scenario B. They didn't consider it a crime because the person was someone they already trusted, or someone too close to accuse. Both scenarios point to one uncomfortable possibility. Backhand index pointing right, the story was created to make the truth more socially acceptable. It's easier to blame a nameless man than confront a relative. 3. Why is Timmy treated as normal, not as evidence? In a community with a history of intermarriage, A baby born to a disabled woman could trigger a legal investigation even if there was no assault. In cases where the mother cannot legally consent, the pregnancy itself can be evidence of a crime. So here's a question that no one can answer. Red square, why wasn't Timmy treated as evidence? His birth should have triggered a police investigation, a medical exam, social services intervention, documentation about the father, state guardianship involvement. But none of that happened. Instead, Timmy grew up on the same porch. He sat beside Lorraine every day. No authorities ever stepped in. Warning, that means someone prevented intervention. Warning, someone chose silence over protection. Warning, someone had enough influence to keep things hidden. Silence takes power. And someone in that family, or community, had it. Could the holler have agreed to keep this quiet? In places where families live for generations, community loyalty is stronger than the law. In isolated hollers, people take care of their own problems internally. That doesn't always mean justice. Sometimes it means secrecy. There are many reasons a small community wouldn't expose an assault case. They fear police involvement. They don't trust the courts. They don't want their family name dragged publicly. They don't want to expose inbreeding that happened long before. And most importantly, collision. If the father was related, exposing him means exposing the entire family's history. Not just one man. Not just one DNA result. But generations. So instead of truth, they give a name. A name just believable enough. A name just far enough from bloodline. A name that points the camera away from the family, not into it. 5. Who benefits from the Joe story? Let's break this down logically. If Joe is real and he violated Lorraine and everyone knows he did it, the family looks like they failed to protect her. But if the father was a Whittaker, the family looks guilty. The community looks complicit. The entire history becomes exposed. Generational abuse could be revealed. The state could make legal moves. Lawsuits could arise. In that case, the Joe story protects. Heavy checkmark the living family. Heavy checkmark the legacy. Heavy checkmark the social narrative. Heavy checkmark the community's silence. Heavy checkmark any father who still lives among them. Heavy checkmark the truth from being legally investigated. That would make the lie not just convenient, but necessary for survival. 6. Timmy's birth should have triggered government involvement, but didn't. One undeniable fact. White medium star Lorraine receives government disability benefits. White medium star people on disability are monitored by social services. White medium star when disabled adults have children, the government investigates. Yet no investigation happened. What? Possible reasons. Heavy checkmark the birth was hidden. Heavy checkmark authorities never knew. Heavy checkmark the family never sought medical assistance. Heavy checkmark there was no documentation. Heavy checkmark no one outside the holler reported it. But here's the catch. Red circle the family says they know exactly who the father is. If that's true, then someone was there during the pregnancy and birth. Someone saw it happen. Someone helped. Someone registered Timmy. Someone pretended everything was normal. Which means, detectives, if they can identify a man from 40 years ago, they were fully aware of the pregnancy while it happened. So why did they do nothing? Because maybe the real father wasn't a stranger at all. 7. Why the state took Timmy and didn't clarify why. Right now, Timmy is under state guardianship. So are Ray and Lorraine. But the state has given zero explanation for why. They didn't say abuse, unsafe conditions, health neglect, financial exploitation. All they said was, they are under protection. That wording is important. That wording implies investigation. And what's the one thing the state might be quietly investigating now that the world is watching? Backhand index pointing right the real history behind Timmy's birth. Backhand index pointing right who his father really is. Backhand index pointing right whether a crime was committed but covered up. Backhand index pointing right whether the lie told on camera is false testimony. The state doesn't need internet drama to investigate. They need a documented clue, a public accusation, or conflicting statements. Guess what they just got? Heavy checkmark a public confession of rape. Heavy checkmark a named suspect. Heavy checkmark no police report. Heavy checkmark public outrage. Heavy checkmark millions of witnesses. Now the state cannot ignore it. The real question now. The mystery is not whether Timmy's father was Joe. The mystery is, red circle who is being protected? Red circle who benefits from the lie? Red circle what happens if DNA testing is done? Red circle what happens if the truth is worse than the story? Because if the truth was an outsider, the family failed to defend Lorraine. But if the truth was someone within the holler, they didn't fail her. They betrayed her. Speech balloon comment below. Do you believe DNA testing should be legally required to finally reveal the truth about Timmy's father? Yes or no, and why? The debate surrounding Timmy's father no longer circles around curiosity or speculation. It has evolved into something much larger, a question of justice, accountability, and protection for a disabled woman who could never defend herself. Whether the Joe story is true, fabricated, exaggerated, or manipulated, one fact stands above all else. Backhand index pointing right. Lorraine could not legally consent. That one sentence changes everything. It turns a mystery into a potential felony. It transforms gossip into a case file. It demands an answer, not an assumption. So, should DNA testing be demanded? Should the state intervene more aggressively? Should the truth be forced out, even if it breaks what's left of the Whittaker family? To answer that, we need to go deeper. Not into rumors, but into the real-world consequences of revealing Timmy's biological father. Because once DNA enters the story, everything changes. 1. What DNA could reveal? 3 possible outcomes. If a DNA test were conducted today, it would point in one of 3 directions. Outcome A, the father was an outsider, someone like Joe. If DNA showed the father was not a Whittaker, the family story could be true. That man could still be guilty of raping a disabled woman. But the state would face a major limitation. The suspect is likely dead, and the crime is beyond statute limitations in most states. Would that bring justice? Emotionally, yes. Legally, not likely. It would. Heavy checkmark validate Lorraine as a victim. Heavy checkmark validate Timmy as a child conceived by assault. Heavy checkmark expose a crime that the community ignored. Heavy checkmark reveal that witnesses did nothing. But it would end there. No arrest. No trial. No prison. Just confirmation. Real but symbolic. Outcome B, the father was someone related to Lorraine. This is the most feared possibility. If DNA names a relative, everything changes. Fire, the crime becomes incest plus rape. Fire, even if decades old, new charges could apply. Fire, multiple family members could be implicated. Fire, a conspiracy of silence could be investigated. Fire, government benefits could be reevaluated. Fire, court guardianship could be reinforced permanently. This would no longer be about one man. It would be about an entire environment of coercion and misuse of power. If the father was a brother, father, uncle, cousin, or even someone closely related, red circle, it is not just a rape case. Red circle, it is a case of systemic, generational, biological abuse. The state would have grounds to take every disabled family member into permanent care. Deny the family control over finances tied to them. Launch criminal proceedings against living relatives. Investigate who covered up the pregnancy. Examine whether benefits fraud occurred. In short, collision DNA wouldn't just reveal a father. It could dismantle the entire family dynamic. That might be justice. But it might also destroy the only home they've ever known. Outcome C, the truth can't be determined. DNA might reveal something murky, such as multiple potential relatives, insufficient records, contamination or lack of documentation, matches to people who have died long ago. In such a case, DNA would strongly suggest incest, but might not name one single father. That still matters. It would prove a crime occurred but fail to identify one culprit. This would leave the state with the proof they need to permanently control guardianship and supervision, but not enough to pursue anyone directly. This outcome is the most likely. And also the most tragic, because it confirms everything while punishing no one. 2. Why the story of Joe feels convenient. In psychology, when families face unimaginable shame, they often create a story that protects the group. It's called collective narrative shielding. It works like this. A story is born inside the group. Everyone repeats it not because they believe it but because it is easier than the truth. The story becomes fact simply because no one challenges it. The lie becomes a survival tool. So when Betty, Larry, and BJ looked at each other with awkward half-smiles and repeated one name, Joe, it didn't look like truth. It looked like survival. The community expected them to offer an answer to Mark, so they gave him the safest one. Not the most accurate. Not the most moral. Just the one that protected what was left of the family from scrutiny. Naming a dead man, if Joe is truly deceased, is strategic. Heavy check mark, he cannot defend himself. Heavy check mark, he cannot be questioned. Heavy check mark, he cannot be DNA tested. Heavy check mark, he cannot be arrested. And conveniently, heavy check mark, he cannot expose anyone else. 3. If the father is dead, why does DNA still matter? Some might say, if the man is dead, what's the point? Let it go. But DNA is not about revenge. It's not even about punishing someone. It's about acknowledging what happened to Lorraine and protecting the future. Here's why DNA is crucial even if no one goes to jail. Police car light reason number 1. It confirms a crime occurred. Lorraine deserves that truth. Police car light reason number 2. It could protect other vulnerable relatives from repeated harm. There may be others at risk. Police car light reason number 3. It justifies state guardianship and ensures care. Without proof, the state is less accountable. Police car light reason number 4. It builds a legal barrier against financial exploitation. Right now, anyone could claim guardianship to access Social Security benefits tied to them. Police car light reason number 5. It forces the community to acknowledge the truth. Denial enables future abuse. DNA is not about destroying the Whittakers. It is about preventing history from quietly continuing. 4. Should we force the state to test the DNA? This is where the moral crisis intensifies. Because forcing DNA testing without consent raises legal and ethical dilemmas. Can you force a disabled adult to be DNA tested? Yes, if they are under guardianship or considered vulnerable. Can you force a family to reveal paternity? Yes, if there are signs of abuse or state-funded care. Should the public demand it? That's where opinions differ. Arguments for DNA testing. Lorraine and Timmy deserve justice. Medical history matters for Timmy's future health. It protects others from potential predators. It stops false family narratives. It could expose systemic neglect. Arguments against DNA testing. It could traumatize a disabled woman who may not fully understand the process. It could destroy the only stable environment she knows. It could lead to legal chaos without meaningful punishment. It could turn their lives into more public spectacle. Both sides are morally valid. So the critical question becomes, backhand index pointing right, which choice causes the least harm? Silence or truth? 5. What Timmy might lose if the truth comes out. Many people assume that finding the father equals justice, but they forget what Timmy could lose. His legal guardianship could shift permanently. He could be institutionalized long-term. He might never return home. He may lose financial support if the state restructures benefits. He could become even more isolated in a facility away from family contact. In other words, warning justice for the mother could cost stability for the son. Is it worth it? Do we risk damaging one vulnerable person to protect another? Or is the system obligated to act regardless of consequences? 6. Should the family be protected or exposed? If the father was a relative, exposing it destroys the narrative the community has lived with. It turns a marginalized, impoverished family into a symbol of abuse and secrecy. It puts them in the crosshairs of government, law enforcement, and public judgment. The Whittakers have already been filmed, analyzed, criticized, and dissected more than any other impoverished family in America. Would DNA testing be helping them? Or further exploiting them? That is the ethical center of this dilemma. Because yes, Lorraine deserves justice. But do abused, disabled victims always benefit from uncovering the full truth? Some don't. Some simply need protection going forward, not vengeance from the past. 7. The most important question. Not who is Timmy's father, but Red circle, what outcome protects Lorraine and Timmy best today? If the truth helps them, we pursue it. If the truth harms them, we reconsider our approach. The debate is not about satisfying curiosity. It is about safeguarding vulnerable lives whose choices were taken away from them long ago. So what should happen? Here is the most balanced, ethical conclusion. Heavy checkmark: DNA testing should be conducted. Heavy checkmark: only by the state. Heavy checkmark: only under sealed legal supervision. Heavy checkmark: not for public entertainment. Heavy checkmark: not to expose the family further. Heavy checkmark: only to ensure justice and protection moving forward. If a crime is confirmed, the state should use that information to protect the vulnerable, to maintain proper guardianship, to ensure safe housing, to prevent exploitation, to secure medical and financial support. The public does not need the name. The internet does not need the details. Timmy and Lorraine need safety, not spectacle. Speech balloon. Comment below. Do you believe DNA evidence should be confidential and used only to protect the Whittakers, not to expose them? The debate surrounding Timmy's father has spiraled into a storm of outrage, theories, and demands for accountability. Many believe justice means exposing every hidden truth. Others argue that justice doesn't always mean public answers. It means doing what protects the most vulnerable people involved. As the conversation intensifies, one truth rises above all the noise. Backhand index pointing right: the Whittakers didn't ask to be a symbol. They didn't choose to become a national mystery. The world made them a subject of curiosity, a spectacle, and finally, a controversy. But what they need now isn't more exposure. They need protection, dignity, and peace. 1. The internet turned a tragedy into entertainment. When the first video of the Whittakers went viral, viewers reacted with shock, disbelief, pity, fascination, even horror. Their appearance, speech, behaviors, everything was dissected publicly without context. But the internet didn't ask. Who protects them? Who speaks for them? Are they safe? Have they been exploited? Did something happen that no one ever reported? Millions watched their videos. Millions debated their lives. Millions speculated about their genetics. And yet very few asked, Red circle, are we doing more harm than help? The truth is uncomfortable. Pushpin: what started as raising awareness, slowly turned into prying. Pushpin: what began as documenting life, evolved into exploiting vulnerability. Pushpin: and what some call justice, now risks deep emotional harm. Their trauma isn't content. Their suffering isn't a detective game. Their family history isn't a viral cliffhanger. If the public truly wants justice, justice must be about safeguarding, not sensationalizing. 2. The real threat isn't a father's identity, it's the system. The obsession with finding Timmy's father overshadows the real failure. Collision: the state never protected Lorraine. Collision: the community failed to intervene. Collision: no social worker documented her pregnancy. Collision: no hospital raised a red flag. Collision: no agency investigated her capabilities as a parent. Whether the father was Joe, a neighbor, a relative, or someone unknown, the crime isn't just who did it. The crime is that no one protected her. A disabled woman was impregnated. A disabled child was born into hardship. No formal investigation ever occurred. That failure belongs to the entire system. Not the Whittakers. Not the victim. Not even solely the alleged perpetrator. It belongs to every institution that should have stepped in and didn't. 3. Investigating the past doesn't fix the present. Even if DNA proves everything the internet suspects, would it rewind their life? Would it undo trauma? Would it bring healing? Justice doesn't always come from dragging the past into daylight. Sometimes justice means building a safe future. For Lorraine, the question isn't, who harmed her decades ago? It's, Red circle, is she safe now? Red circle, is she protected from harm going forward? Red circle, does she receive proper care and dignity? For Timmy, the question isn't, who fathered him? It's, blue circle, does he have the support he needs as an adult? Blue circle, is his health protected? Blue circle, is his living situation stable and safe? DNA won't feed them. DNA won't pay for medical care. DNA won't ease trauma. DNA won't protect them tomorrow. but responsible guardianship, legal care, and monitored assistance will. 4. Why public justice can destroy real lives. Imagine forcing DNA, revealing a painful truth, and then leaving them with no support to deal with the fallout. That's what public outrage usually does. Thumbs down, it demands truth. Thumbs down, it exposes the vulnerable. Thumbs down, and then it walks away. Justice isn't exposure. Justice isn't humiliation. Justice isn't making a family pay for generations of isolation and poverty. True justice looks like heavy checkmark medical support, heavy checkmark protection from exploitation, heavy checkmark supervised guardianship, heavy checkmark secure housing, heavy checkmark mental health evaluation, heavy checkmark legal oversight that respects dignity. Justice is help, not harm. 5. The cycle of shame ends only when help replaces blame. The Whittakers have lived through poverty, neurological impairment, social abandonment, systemic neglect, community silence, generational misunderstanding. And now, on top of that, they face public judgment from millions who do not understand disability, generational trauma, or isolation. The world sees the most inbred family. But the world rarely sees a mother who did the best she could with limited comprehension. Siblings who don't know how to express emotion but love each other. A family surviving without education, support, exposure, or access. A community that ignored warning signs for decades. A government that failed to step in until cameras arrived. We must stop acting as though this family is a mystery to solve, and start treating them as human beings to protect. Because the true tragedy isn't what happened in their past. It's how many people ignored it while it was happening. 6. So what now? What should actually happen? Here is what a responsible solution looks like. Locked 1. Confidential DNA testing, only if needed for care. Not for the internet. Not for content. Not for public analysis. Only under sealed legal and medical supervision. Bust in silhouette 2. Permanent Adult Protective Services monitoring. No family member should manage benefits alone if vulnerability exists. Syringe 3. Comprehensive health evaluation. Neurological, dental, medical, psychiatric, and genetic screening. House 4. Long-term housing safety plan. Not forced separation unless absolutely necessary. Credit card 5. Financial guardianship managed by the state or certified attorney. To prevent exploitation by outsiders or family. Police car light 6. Investigate past neglect responsibly, without public exposure. Only if it directly affects present safety. Red Heart 7. Humanitarian support, not viral exploitation. Food, clothing, infrastructure, supervised donations, counseling. And most importantly, Pushpin treat them as citizens, not content. Pushpin respect privacy over curiosity. Pushpin protect dignity over drama. 7. What the public should do. Since the internet helped create this problem, the internet must also help fix it. That doesn't mean demanding answers. It means demanding protection. The right questions are: Are they being treated with dignity? Do they have lifetime protection? Are they financially secure without exploitation? Are donations monitored ethically? Is Lorraine shielded from future harm? Is Timmy guaranteed proper care for life? That is where the focus must go. Not on one man's identity, but on the family's future. Final thought. Lorraine doesn't need the world to expose her past. Timmy doesn't need the internet to solve his conception. What they need is exactly what they've been denied their entire lives. Small blue diamond safety. Small blue diamond dignity. Small blue diamond compassion. Small blue diamond protection. Small blue diamond respect. The question isn't, red square, who is Timmy's father? The question is, blue square, who will make sure this never happens again to someone like Lorraine? Because if society leaves them unprotected, then the world didn't help the Whittakers. It exploited them all over again. Speech balloon comment below. Which matters more for the Whittaker family right now? Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.